Hello, welcome to Guys Like Us, the podcast about existential problems and champagne issues. How are you, Paul?
I am fantastic. How are you, Marc?
I'm amazing.
Happy birthday.
Oh,
I'm not going to sing, though, because I think it's that's when everyone turns off. But happy birthday, buddy.
Thank
what
you.
What an honor.
It is officially, I decide I'm officially middle-aged. I don't know if that's actually true, but, can't escape 45. 44, you're like, maybe I'm lower 40s now.
No, actually not. But you know what? I told you. Did I ever tell you this theory? I think 44. I'm sorry for you. Was great for me. Is great because it's clearly also already in your mid 40s, but it's the start.
Yes.
Right. Whereas 43 was kind of the end of being early 40s, and being
totally
the end of things usually sucks. So 44 is fine. 45 is fine. I think then 47 is gonna suck again. But hey, now 45 is awesome. So enjoy.
Awesome. Well, look, I think every year is pretty great. But
I agree. I agree.
I like dispelling what that year's supposed to be and just feeling good, and pushing
You know what?
forward.
I make up a new story of why this is the best age I've ever had every year.
Yeah.
And this is my 44 story.
How's that working out for you?
It's been working out. It's been really working out well for me, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
it's all what you believe, I think.
Well, it's an incredible fall day here in New York. It's how do you say it? Kaiserwetter, right, in German?
Oh man, is this a new thing that every podcast episode you're gonna impress me with some German shit because I always make fun of you that you don't actually speak German?
Totally. I want our listeners convinced that I actually one day will do one entirely in German. Maybe episode 250. We'll see.
This is how you can become the Hof, basically. The new Hof of
exactly. That is my dream. That's what we're working towards.
That's what we're actually doing. Guys, Marc wants to, be the most popular English-speaking podcast in Austria. So that's actually why we're doing all of this. And
I know the bar is very high for that. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And number two is, so he basically wants to be the new David Hasselhoff, right? I mean, have this funny kind of fame where you're an American actor, I guess, but your principal place of fame is somehow the Austrian German market. So
am I in a midlife crisis? Be honest. Am I is that?
I know a thing or two about that, but let's not jump things. But no, I don't think you are. I think is a totally legit.
That seems like a reasonable dream. Yeah,
absolutely.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, full on agree.
Today is a really special podcast because I think we are going to reintroduce you, I think, to our listeners, which I think is our listeners have been asking for that. We've been having a number of episodes, and they're like, "Wait, can you remind me who are you guys? And actually, why should I be listening to you?" And we said, "Okay, well, fair enough. We can step back and reintroduce ourselves, especially as we're going to launch officially quite soon." So that's the spirit of this one. And I can't believe I get to, interview my dear friend on my birthday. So I can't imagine, what a gift. I'm reminded of that great Kanye West line when he did that. He's like, "My presence is a present. Kiss my ass."
Basically, that's all you get from me today.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly my birthday. That's how I'm feeling my birthday gift.
And I'm gonna top this one off. Even I am because I am having a really, really nice glass of Burgundy just for you, for you, which and it's quite early actually also here, to be honest. I wouldn't say the sun is still shining, but it's still light out. But I thought in honor of your birthday, I can't sit here on a Friday late afternoon and not drink something amazing. And
I'm deeply touched. And you know exactly the kind of bottle I would open. So thank you. I'm going to have one of those later.
I'm sure you will.
I've been coming off 7 days of partying anyway at other friends' 50th birthdays and stuff like that. So
those are coming, man. Those are coming.
Yeah, I know.
I had one on my first. I think my first one the other week as well. It's kind of Well, let's not
die Bremse machen, yeah.
Yeah, no, fair enough, and you should be. But we're gonna do a podcast about age, I think. But okay, let's
All right.
focus. But there's going to be an interview about you and me, right? I mean,
Yes.
both.
Yeah.
So we're going to start here, and then let's see how that goes.
Perfect. And I think part of the spirit of guys like us, I think we have to understand, well, who are the guys like us? And so um I prepared a series of questions for you. You ready for these? I think
I am
they won't
kind of
not
nervous, actually.
they won't go so deep, I promise.
It's like an like a job
No,
interview, which
exactly,
I haven't done in a while. Yeah.
exactly. Otherwise, we might need another co-host. But
Yeah.
joking aside, okay. So for those who can't visualize this handsome blonde mid-40s Austrian man I'm talking to here,
It
uh,
is on YouTube, though, guys.
it
Just
is
saying.
okay.
Yeah.
So Paul, briefly, I think if you had to describe the man I'm looking at today, how would you introduce yourself? Who are you?
That is already a deep question. I'm gonna stay very superficial. Right? My name's
Start
Paul.
there. Yeah, I
Yeah,
can take you
I'm
deeper.
gonna stay very superficial. I am, as I said before, 44 years old. I live in Vienna, Austria. I have 3 kids who are aged 11, 9, and almost 7, boy, boy, girl. I am divorced. I am single. Um, I don't know what I am as a job, actually. That's an interesting one. But we can talk about that too.
Mm.
And I love lots of things. I love sports. I love good food, good wine, good company. That's kind of my Tinder profile right now. Which I don't have. I was just kidding. Yeah.
Keep going. All right.
Okay, keep on
And
going.
that
Is that
and
is
that
that satisfactory?
oh, it's a good start. And I'm really thinking about what brings you here today. If you think about someone who I'm talking to now, like why are we chatting, and what feels makes you feel called to have a conversation with your friend?
Hey, listen, and what brings us here today? What brings us here today is our friendship.
Mm.
First and foremost, I think, and second of all, um, a deep wish that I think we both share, that I discovered in the past year where I didn't work. I was on a sabbatical for the past 12 months, basically, and discovered that I was missing creativity in my life, and we had this crazy idea when we sat together in a beautiful restaurant in Paris and talked about every aspect of life during 3 hours, where we also drank 2 bottles of wine and ate all the menu back and forth, and kind of thought that that's actually interesting because we are at an age and at our point and the point in our life with you know and the privilege that we have seen one or the other things, both
Mm,
in our private lives, in our professional lives, that we think is worth sharing. and
mm,
and so all of these things, I think, culminated to the point where we sit here today and have been trying to get, have been actually working on this podcast. And this is, I think, the 14th episodes that we are recording. And now we are ready to share this with the world and a bigger audience next week. And that's kind of what got us here. So lots of different, I would say, yeah, sources.
well, it's cool. I mean, and agree. It's always really powerful. I think we always felt like there's a bit of a white space in terms of what we want to talk about, especially guys our age and things like that. And so, but I think to give people a better sense of kind of your background and what you've done. Okay, you're your father. Obviously, you're divorced. You've gone through your Tinder profile, what you love, but how at the cocktail party kind of notion, when people want to know what you've done or what your background is, what do you say to them?
I usually really, as you see now, suck at that. Um, but
We'll draw it
what
out.
I think the easiest part, up until a year ago, I ran a really cool company called Room. They do kids bikes,
They're
and
amazing.
they're
Yeah.
amazing kids bikes. They're really the best kids bike out there in the world. I got into that company, about, as I said, 4 or 5 years ago, and basically took it over from the founders. Grew it from a 50 million turnover business to 120 million turnover business. Probably going to hit even, or is going to hit even more this year. Lots of things I learned there, and that's the last thing I did. I don't know how I would describe myself, professionally right now. I guess the best term would probably be an entrepreneur, because I'm doing lots of different things and
Yeah.
doing some things that make money, some things that lose money, some things for fun, and some things for work, so to say. I always find it hard when my kids ask me what I do. It's hard to describe, but that's what I'm doing right now. So that's kind of the brief.
So now you got like a portfolio role, but I think before that, you were CEO of this kick-ass kids bike company, which is cool because I mean, who doesn't like to be in the kid space, right? Especially as a father of
Amazing.
three. How was
Yeah.
that, by the way? Just having being in a business that your kids could actually relate to,
Oh man, that's also
asking for a friend,
when I left. Actually, the my biggest worry was how I would tell my kids, because they loved it so much. I mean, I
Mm,
was myself. I mean, I'm an avid biker. I love bikes. At one point, I had, I think, I don't know. It was still single digit, but high single digit amount of bikes, and then three kids, and they loved it. They loved to come to the office to be able to ride prototypes and see the product that their dad works on the streets everywhere, at all times, and that made them very proud. So, in fact, when I left and I told them, they were really, really sad. They were also really
mm,
worried that I was unemployed, and asked me all the time, and had great ideas about the new jobs I could do, from being a chef, which, I mean, I think is very nice that they think I can cook.
100%.
Um,
You
and,
can. I've been
yeah,
the
no, I
benefit of that.
can.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was amazing. It was really cool, and it was also something, as a role, to run a company like this, that I've always wanted to do. I mean, from the point where I got into business school, where we met 15
Yeah.
years ago, that
Yeah.
was something I would have, put into my kind of, application, that at one point I would like to run a place like this, and I did, and I really loved it. I really
Yeah.
loved that.
I imagine that's probably one of your great professional successes, ascending to the role. And but I'm curious to hear just from us, and it's probably another podcast, but nonetheless, like, what are some of your greatest lessons you've taken either from there or before that you can share?
I mean,
Illuminate a little bit about kind of your philosophy of how of who you are.
I think, from there, I started basically working there at the end of 2020, beginning of 21, which was, a boom time, for this company, who had, existed back then for 7 years. And there was COVID, and everyone wanted a bike. And so,
Mm,
we went from, also being very, I wouldn't say cocky and arrogant, but to a certain extent, we were thinking we could take this thing public in 2 years, and we're gonna grow like crazy. And we grew like crazy through the next couple of years, and we didn't have bikes, and all of our problem was actually getting product. And then from one day to the other, the problem became, we have too much product,
mm,
and demand
classic.
dropped. And so
Yeah.
I went through a roller coaster of super fast growth, to really having to readapt to new reality very, very quickly. So within the time span I was there and I ran this company, I think I had basically, 3, 4 phases that you usually have in the period of 10 years. But what stood out to me was, actually, at the end, and we rebuilt and restructured, but at the end of the day, what really mattered is getting the right people in, and getting,
Yeah.
finding the right people for those roles, and motivating them, and getting the right spirit, culture, mindset. And that's what worked, and that's what's still working. And all of the guys and all of the team that I had put together are basically still there and rocking it. And this year was amazing. And lots of the new products that we had kind of, worked at for the past 4 years, and it takes a long time actually to come out with something new, are hitting the market now, and they're great successes. And that's awesome. So it's really about the people, and that's what I take with me. And also what I miss the most, to be honest, is working with
Mm,
those guys and seeing
yeah.
how
Yeah.
they rock. Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of like those crazy cycles of business. Sometimes you launch a thing, and then by the time it comes to the market, you're no longer there. So you just kind of hope it. It's a
The funny
weird.
thing is, I also left my old job exactly at a point where I felt, now we have a perfect team.
Mm,
And because what I did before is, I was in consulting, all of my
yeah.
life, really, all of my professional life. I did a few consulting roles at, KPMG, then BCG, Boston Consulting Group. Then I left, joined a smaller company. Basically, within that, built my own team, and practice together with a partner, that then grew into a 30, 40 person team that did management consulting for, for larger companies, but also for mid caps, and we then sold it to a bigger network here in Austria, where we continued the work. And I think we made some really cool and bold choices also back then in terms of team, and at the point where it was really, we were thinking, oh, now it works, because when you're building something, people leave. I remember I had moments where I sat in my office thinking, damn it, every good person I had just quit. What do I do
Mhm.
now? And then when you get to certain size and all of the right people are there, finally you're like, oh, this is nice. And you actually can feel it because it means less work for you. And that was the moment where I got the call from, the two guys of Woom, and asked me to join them. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And kind of in a similar way that happened now. So I wonder if I will ever get the chance to actually work with the team that I put together and see how it
Well,
works
actually, I
when they
think
work.
if I had to answer, like just drawing out some through lines here. I mean, I think in terms of who you are, I think you are no doubt a great leader, and I think you are able to rally people behind like something that you can see that, and because you're such a dogmatic and fierce, both competitor, but also I think you got when you have a goal in mind, you just want to go in and crush it. I mean, that's part of your Terminator nature, I think, and I think that inspires a lot of people because it's not a lot of people have that kind of grit and ability to want to build. And I think that's
Thank you,
innate
buddy.
inside you. Yeah, was that always the case?
I think the grit, yes. The grit, yes. Yeah. I always, if I wanted, and if I set my, sights on something, I was always very determined to get there and to get shit done. I can
Well, I
also be
think
very lazy though. It's a
well,
very interesting combination.
it's a great bit of self awareness. But I'm gonna snap us out for a sec. I remember we were once uh, going across Morocco and with a bunch of friends, and we were trying to traverse some crazy pathway, right? And like in some shitty car. And I was
The
like
Fiat
it was something
Punto.
like this. Yeah, yeah. And
Hmm.
at some point like this, and I remember it was became clear that it would be beyond idiotic for us to attempt this. Like we're gonna like pierce some tires, like we're gonna be out, right? Stuck somewhere in the desert, like and you got out of the car. Back then you were smoking. I remember. There's another thing we should talk about. With your little Moroccan scarf, and you just look at the path. You just start mumbling. You're like, "I'm going to come back here and just go over this motherfucker. I'm going to get you." Right? And I was like, "What is this guy talking about?" Right?
I'm
but
not saying
but
it's
you
always
had
a
this.
great idea to be like
No,
this,
no, no, no. But you had this sort of like
I
like
was also probably
goal.
high.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. But you were that Moroccan kiff.
It's
Really.
not like I remember any of what you just said, but
Uh,
I really
I
don't. I
remember
have
it so
zero
vividly
recollection.
because I was just like, "Who is this guy?" Who just wants to come back with a bigger SUV to go over this path because he couldn't do it over his
Yeah,
Fiat.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I believe you because it very much sounds like me.
Yeah,
It very
exactly.
much sounds like me.
Well, okay. Well, let's zoom back a little bit for us. So you grew up in Graz. I think you had a family, two siblings, two parents. Were
Yeah,
you?
I mean, very quickly. I mean, the oldest of three, a younger sister, and a younger brother. 3 and 5 years younger. Grew up in Graz you know, in a very, I don't know how you say this, behütet in German is in a very nice middle class, I would say,
Hmm.
upbringing, house in the suburbs, and my dad was a quite successful tax lawyer who built his own firm, and I
Yeah.
got exposed to, I think, how you think as an entrepreneur quite early in my life, because he came home every day, and for lunch we always had lunch as a family, which was, I think, very particular in a sense. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She stayed home after she had me, which probably was because I was difficult. I don't know. No, but it was the way they really split it like this, very old school, very, very old school. And I guess also my kind of upbringing was very old school,
Mm,
very, you have to be, good at school and behave. I didn't behave, but I was good at school, I would
mm,
say. And so it was a very performance driven thing with, I think, a little bit of, a love for performance, but with a very strong underpinning that I felt always very secure, and I always felt that my family and parents were there for me no matter what. So So that's kind of in short how it went. And I left the great town of where also Arnold Schwarzenegger was born, close by. I always have to say this. When I, at the age of 20, basically in the middle of my after 2 years of college, I changed college to university to study at the university in Vienna. And ever since then, with breaks in other countries like Spain, where we met, or
Yep.
Tokyo, and I was actually also, I lived in the US for a while, for half a year, and went to high school. That's a beautiful story in Ohio.
Like all Germans, and actually any student, they're always shipped to the middle of the country. You know that, right? It's like
Man,
Oklahoma, Ohio.
it was. I can tell you the day I left and I stood at this airport in Graz, and I hated my parents. Like, I hated their guts for the fact that had just graduated from high school in Austria. I was able to drive, drink, party, and actually be done with school after 12 years. And what do? They send me to a country where I'm not allowed to drink, not allowed to drive, and I have to go to school again. And I had to leave, my
But
girlfriend
we have
back, which
freedom.
also sucked.
How was the freedom?
Yeah, man. I mean, I didn't feel I saw the fucking freedom when I rode the school bus on my way to school, because I stayed 4 miles out of this 10,000, soul place. And I rode the school bus with every 12-year-old, because everyone who was older was basically riding a car. And I saw endless corn and summer wheat fields and soybean fields. I felt the freedom, buddy. I really did. But at the end of the day, it was good. It was amazing. And it was a great experience.
What about I'm sort of kind of reflecting a little bit
Yeah,
about
yeah.
parenthood, and no doubt you are. And we want to get to what it means to raise your kids a little bit, but like, we all take things away from our parents, and whether we like it or not. And are there some influences that you feel like you see yourself taking on from your parents, or even your siblings, that you apply today, or are there some things that you take on? You're like, God damn, that is exactly the thing I swore I would never do, and I still do it.
I mean, I don't know if you I'm sure, I think we talk about this. I did have those moments where I spoke to my kids and using the exact same phrases and words that my parents did when they spoke to me, especially when, when they do something wrong when they do something you don't like and you get angry, which is the most brutal flashback, I think. I've never felt so ashamed in my life, which means something
Yeah,
for
yeah.
the things for me means something. But let's get to that later. No, in all honesty, I don't know, actually. I think if you want the grit and determination, I mean, that is something that for sure, I
Clearly,
got
your
from
dad had
both of
that.
my parents. and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and there is a part of being together as a family, eating and having dinners, and that being an important, I think, to my mom, that was, I think, a little bit her place of refuge and
Mm,
wholesomeness, and her way
mm,
of showing that she cared was providing for us, and
mm.
putting us around the table, and putting enough food on the table, which was hard because my brother and my dad and I, we eat like, is
Horses,
insane.
right?
Horses, like
Yeah, yeah.
bears, is crazy. So it was really crazy. So that's kind of the first things that spring to mind.
Hmm.
Mm.
Well, let's move on. Like, okay, so we've got good sense of your childhood, etc. Let's talk about your 20s and your 30s. When we met, you were switching career. We were in business school in Barcelona. I think discovered all kinds of loves at that point in time. Love for for going off piste, for skipping school, for actually being actually teaching. To be honest, you were an extraordinary teacher for a lot of people wanted to learn from you. By the way, I think that's one big trend moving forward. I mean, I think you were president of how many clubs at business school?
No, I wasn't president of none, but I think I was a VP of one only, and I was a VP of education for the consulting club, and I did lots of classes for how to crack a consulting case, which is really
That's what it was.
such
I
a
feel like
random
every
thing.
time, yeah, that's why we call you the professor. In the
That's why
background.
you called me the professor. And I came back doing that actually for many years to Asade, and I loved it. And I still do. And it's still
Yeah,
a
yeah.
big goal of mine. And, Professor Vivas, if you listen, I know I haven't texted you in a while, but I am going to start haunting you again and harassing you for that class we're going to develop together, because, we said we're going to do this. And I'd love to do this, actually. It's something that I
Mm,
really like doing, to
mm,
pass on thing. And I guess what we're doing right now is also kind of, in the same spirit. But
Yeah.
my 20s were, I went to university here in Vienna, and I was in a relationship which was quite, in a sense, quite mature. We lived together, and it was quite, I didn't go out and party hard. I think a lot of these things I kind of made up for when we met,
That was clear. He was
that was
like, you
very
were,
clear.
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah, exactly. It was
So I
like
was very,
a whole new
thankful,
world this kid was
yeah,
in.
to meeting you guys
It's candy
and
shop.
getting this out of the way. And after that, I joined BCG really, and I met my then future wife
I
and
was
now
about to say,
ex-wife
because business
there.
school, you met a lot of loves. Your
Yeah, and
friends
and
and
and and that was,
your wife.
one of the, probably the biggest, thing that happened to me, when I was in Barcelona. Who then moved, was Italian and had lived in London, and then moved to Vienna, to live, with me, and build a life together, which we did, and also got married a few years later only, and then had very quickly had our first son, and then two more, and so yeah, Barcelona was really, if you want, one of the key pivotal times of my life, I'd say.
Yeah, connects you with new
Mm.
friends, a job, a
Yeah.
wife. I think that's pretty good ROI.
Yeah, it was pretty okay. It was pretty okay. I can't That was an amazing time. I probably,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to say best time of my life, but really in terms of no worries, it's not bad. Not the best place to be.
No, and you're, I'm gonna go there for our listeners a little bit, because I mean I think your journey of marriage, and therefore and divorce is, I think, actually, and some of the lessons learned, and what you've done, I think, is actually um an important thing for our listeners to be aware of, because I think also you bring a lot of that to our conversation, because it's not just, the act of divorce, which can be a very personal thing, but all the work you've done, I think, also on yourself and others afterwards. Not that anything was wrong with you, but just to do a bit of the sense making, and um carving yourself a path forward, which I actually always found, admirable and candidly inspirational, because I think very few people would go on that path, and I thought you should talk a little bit about it, if you don't mind.
I don't mind. I always say jokingly that the things I do them right, and I did my midlife crisis right too, and I checked all the boxes. And I bought myself a stupid car, and so on and so on and so on. So that's kind of the funny way to talk
It's like
about it.
stereotypical, like midlife
Stereotypical. It was like it's
checklist.
really like, if
Yeah,
you want
you
to
really.
write a book or a checklist, I'm like,
I agree. It's like someone handed you a manual, and you're like, "This is great.
and
Let me
this is great. Let me just tick off every box,
every
you know,
box."
put it to the max, and let's go for fucking do it. I don't have to come back to that road to climb it with a bigger SUV. I had
Yeah,
the
yeah.
big SUV.
You had the biggest. Yeah,
I had the
exactly.
big SUV,
Okay.
and I think, and frankly, I really lost myself there, or I had lost myself there, and in hindsight, I think what got me there is that by the end of my 30s, I had pretty much achieved everything that I had thought my goals were, which were strikingly, similar in terms of life, how the life looks as my parents were. So I was a senior partner at a big consulting firm. I had 3 kids. I was married. We had a beautiful home. Um, I was actually, quite also successful entrepreneurially. We had, invested in a few companies that did really well, startup investments. So, everything looked great. And I think, and I didn't realize that it was happening like this, but I guess somewhere inside I felt still, very empty, and that something was missing. And that, led me to act out in different ways, like checking all those boxes, which in the end, also, led to, the divorce. And I mean, I don't, divorce never happens just because of one person. It usually happens because, a relationship between two people don't work, and not about
Yep.
assigning blame or not taking it. I mean, I take a lot of that, but in the end, it didn't work out. And And also while that happened, I had already, started looking for help, because it was almost like an out of body experience, that you're going through something and you realize, your rational mind kind of realize what's going on there doesn't make sense, but there's such a strong drive and urge somehow to almost destroy the things around you, and
Mm.
you're trying to stop yourself, but you really can't. And that's what happened, is when I started, looking for help, and I talked to, I mean, I did so many different forms of therapy, coachings, things that is, I mean, I
I
can
mean,
write a book about all of this, right?
you probably should. I mean, I feel like, since Vienna is sort of like the source code anyway of psychotherapy, yeah, like
It's true. It's true. It's true.
exactly
Yeah.
between, Jung and Freud, plus all the schools that spawned over, it's a perfect place to to do the round.
Yes, and
Eh,
I was also in a and I also was and then in another relationship for quite a while, and try making that work, which we also didn't make that work. And I wouldn't say also didn't make that work, in a way that didn't work. Period.
yeah,
And it was quite a challenging time. And in the meantime, I ran, this company we talked to about before, Womb, through all of these things. And privately, I was going through that, divorce thing. How do you handle this with kids? How do you handle, kids in a new partnership, and the expectations that come with a new partnership, and so on. So I think I was really at the verge of burning out for a very long time, up until probably, a year and a half, 2 years ago. Um, and when I got myself out of this, through a lot of hard work, as you said.
yeah. I think,
I don't know if that's a fair
as
summary, but trying.
it's pretty fair. I mean, I think, like, the way I would describe it, I remember there was a time where, you were in such a pressure cooker, but at some point, like, you're kind of in a truck and you see a wall and you could turn right or you could turn left, but you're just gonna like like keep going right against that wall. And you might and until you were forced to make a decision. And, I think it was a good not a good time to be your friend, but I mean, I saw how much you were caring, might be the right way of putting it. And what you did afterwards, I think how you once you've made your choices and what you've been working on is also quite interesting because you've also been, doing everything from going on large trips all by yourself, learning how to be at peace but with yourself, trying all kinds of other methodologies to kind of open your mind and
Taking
explore.
mushrooms, do whatever,
Yeah, yeah,
all the
exactly. Well,
things. Yeah.
that's which is
Yeah.
pretty amazing, right? I mean, that's a journey of going on completeness and self-discovery that, and I mean, this is the highest compliment I think most wouldn't do. And, you saw
Thank you.
there was
I
a
mean,
puzzle to complete.
it's there's a few things, right, to take away from this, or that I do. And one is that, uh a lot of people, and you've asked me too, and we talked about this before we did this interview, that do you regret anything? And of course you do, right? I mean, everyone does. I try not to, because I don't think it makes sense. And in the end, I wouldn't be the person I am right now if any of this hadn't happened the way it had happened. And it has, and I'm very happy with who I am today and very
Yeah.
proud about those learnings. Do I wish sometimes that, Paul sitting here today could talk to Paul 5 years ago? Absolutely, 100%. Would Paul 5 years ago have listened? Absolutely not. It wouldn't have made a fucking difference, you know,
At least you have that
because
self-awareness. That
yeah, this dude was on a mission, right? This was a
yeah,
destruction mission.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So that's one thing, and I think I've always been a person that has seen any type of change as a huge opportunity. For myself, and it's true for work life, but it's also true for myself. And I think my past 5 years have cemented this, kind of philosophy that everything that happens to you is an opportunity, and in is us, our responsibility to just take it and make the best out of it, and period. And that's what we're here for. And every day is a new opportunity to do
Mhm.
something different. And looking back is great for learning, but it's not great for lingering. It doesn't make you happier to look in the past.
Hell
And I
no.
find that when you have things that you have done in the past that you're not proud of, and you don't want to look there, um, it sometimes even makes it easier not to look there anymore and to kind of follow that philosophy, because looking back hurts so much that actually the only choice you have is looking forward.
Mm.
And that to me, made that whole, stance towards life so much more clear, because there is only one way, and that's forward, because you can't go back. And going back just means pain. And so let's not go there, and let's just try to make things better. And it obviously changed my relationship to my kids, to my work, to friendship, to every aspect of my life, completely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another, and we've talked about it in past podcasts, actually, how it did. And so I'm in a strange way very thankful for it. And I think found an arrangement also how things work now in my life, the way I see my kids, and the way the relationships I have with, the people that are important in my life, that work for me. So I'm
Yeah,
happy
and by the
about that.
way, I hope you're aware, it's a privilege to take that perspective, given what a lot of people who go through all that, and then that's just, I mean, that's a compliment, not a privilege in the sense of, you had the means to go on that journey, not at all. It just means that I think most aren't blessed enough to have that kind of perspective of kind of drawing the real lessons of pain and hardship, and feeling gratitude, because it's made you better, you know, and feeling for
Yeah,
that.
but it is also a privilege. I mean, let's face it, right? I mean,
That
and we're
too.
gonna make an episode about this too. A privilege that I had not the means, but I also had, I think, the awareness, and yeah, I guess the means and the type of life that I was able to look at this like this. I think other people might not have had, and I did. But again, I think also privilege comes with responsibility, and you have to make
Sure.
the best out of it.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
of
coming
course.
back to the same thing. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
On the time travel front is kind of fun. I'm just curious, like, okay, there's the traveling back from 5 years ago to advise yourself. Is there another time that you would love to go back and not change a path per se, but relive, or a moment? Just trying to give our
I mean,
listeners a
right
sense of
now,
what
as
makes
we're
you really
talking,
happy.
I would say
Yeah,
Barcelona
yeah.
again, and I would actually like to remember. I would like to remember these Morocco things, because that's one of the trips I don't have any recollection of, but that might have something to do with
The
other
amount of the
things we
amount of
did.
stuff you were, yeah, exactly. Well, the quality is quite high there. You know.
No, it was amazing. It was really fun. No, not really, actually. Really, I mean, yeah, no, it's not true. I think those years, my late 30s, and I think that's part of the reason why we're also doing this here today. My late 30s, when I worked the hardest ever in my, that's not true, maybe also in my 40s with Wound, but where I felt so much pressure professionally to build
Mm.
this company and to build this team and to find clients and to find employees, and where we had small kids, which everyone who has small kids knows what that means. It means you don't sleep, you don't really interact with your wife anymore, apart from who changes the diapers and who has to get up, and then you have 3 kids under 5, which is also quite a challenge. So
Bananas.
that time, I wish I would have had the perspective, that I have now, and that is basically that it's not possible, and I very deeply believe that it is not possible to have everything in life and at the same time,
Yeah,
and there's the grass is always greener, and that
yeah.
was always which also drove me to a lot of successes, but in the end also drove me against the wall. And what
Mm.
I've learned today is that there is a phase for everything in life, but maybe by some coincidence of the universe, at one point in your life everything might be perfect for a split second, right? But then it's going to fall apart anyway. So what I'm trying to say is, like, in your 30s, you're trying to have everything. You're trying to have the family, the job, the house, the vacations, the watches, the, whatever other stupid wines, other stupid shit you come up with. Um, but which actually doesn't matter, because you could, do the wines 5 years from now. They would still be great. And there, it's buy the same watches 10 years later. Doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter. And right now, for example, I know right now to me is maybe not the time where I go and run a huge company, unless really all the stars align, because I would like to have more freedom and be there for my kids, because I can tell you for sure that by the time I'm 50, they're not really going to be there anymore, because they're going to be 17,
Yeah, yeah,
15 and
yeah.
13, and going to basically ask me for my credit card, and that's it. So, uh, so that's kind of,
I'm struck by this
I'm
line.
back to, I would like to tell this to Paul when he was 36, knowing that he wouldn't have fucking listened, which
Mm,
I'm not
mm.
100% sure, but that's hypothetical anyways.
You know what's a line that I heard and recently? It was this comedian Bob Odenkirk. I think he
Hmm.
was on Better Call Saul, or he was
Oh
the
man, I
lawyer.
love this guy. I just
Yeah.
actually, what did I see where he was? Oh, on The Bear, he's also.
Oh
It's
yeah.
kind of the
Yeah. 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 Of
guy
course. Of course.
who is I think, the mom's boyfriend or something. He's
Yeah.
so
Yeah, that's
good.
right. That's right.
Oh,
And you know what he asked? He had this little line. He's like, you know who I envy most? She's like, no. And he's like, I envy anyone who still has their kids running around their house. And I was like, shit. I said that's a good reminder. Even though I got kicked in the face again this morning, to cherish it, because you can see he was felt the envy, of the wanting to hear those voices, and encouraging us all to slow down and cherish.
yeah, exactly. And in a sense, that's why I'm
Hard to
blessed for
do,
all the
little
things that
fuckers.
happened, because maybe I wouldn't have realized that. Maybe I would have realized that's too late. And at
Mm.
least now that because what happens, when you then only see your kids every 2 weeks for a few days, is that you really focus on them more, and you kind of, start thinking about this in a different way.
Oh,
And
that's
that
cool.
was to me a blessing.
Mm.
So I could have also been 50 and then figure out, oh, damn it, now I missed this. But I didn't. So that's good.
Okay. Well, listen, I want to loop into some fun stuff because we
Yeah,
could go deeper into kids. So, because we're almost at time, and
we are.
yeah. So if you can invite me, if someone's lucky enough to be your dinner date, where are you taking them? Share with us a little bit your taste.
Oh, that's an interesting one. So I think no, I know it's places that you and I have been to for a long time. If we lived in Paris, I would take them to. Well, I never remember the
Oh,
name
clamato.
of
Yeah.
Clamato. In Vienna, I would take you to Mast, which is one of my absolute favorite places. Is a beautiful kind of wine bar, which is not a wine bar like the other place we went to the other day in New York,
Yeah.
just as a wine bar, but actually is a great
Cloud.
restaurant.
It's a really
Yeah,
amazing
it's a
restaurant.
great
Yeah,
restaurant, but
exactly.
has small plates and a bit shareable, beautiful wine list of stuff that is not, your regular stuff, run by two guys who are actually sommeliers, and are just super nice. And I actually haven't been there for a long time. I need to go. That would be one thing. I think that would be the place. Yeah.
Listeners slide into Paul's DMs. Exactly. So like, take me. Good.
No, and you know what though? I saw on Instagram the other day a restaurant in Vienna we need to go to as well, which is new, and it's like super. I think it's a 2-star place, which is a once in a lifetime kind of place where the guys only cook over open fire,
One of
no
those,
gas,
like the
no
Basque guys.
electricity.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm?
Cool. I
Crazy,
want to go there.
super cool. Yeah,
I'm going to come visit you during Christmas time. I
yeah,
decided it's
exactly.
going
You
to be good.
should come.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, is there anything else you want to add, like to us about?
No, man.
I think we did a good job. I think
I think we did a pretty decent job, and I guess
good
you guys
portrait.
have just to listen to all of the episodes we have done already and will do to find out what if we have anything more to say and to add to the conversation than we did just now.
No, but I think from what it's worth, from the outside in, you get to tell your own story. But as your friend, I can say, um, there's it's always interesting. We were talking about how when we first met and to where we are now, it's like 80-20. We're 80% the same and 20% different. And there's the grit, there's the builder in you, I mean, you're pretty fucking funny too. I mean, you have the humor of a blunt instrument sometimes to
Yeah, sometimes I am very
yeah,
blunt.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You're not the most subtle, I'm
I
more
am not
crass.
subtle at all. I'm
No.
actually no
Yeah,
subtleness
yeah,
is not a thing that anyone would connect with me.
yeah. Like,
Other than the opposite. What is the
your
opposite of
opinions are
Paul?
about,
Subtleness.
yeah, exactly. You're like a elephant on ice sometimes, the way you kind of move
Yeah,
around a little bit.
yeah.
But I think that's part of your charm.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to think that. Yeah,
Yeah.
at least
So
I'm telling myself that. Yeah.
yeah, but that's always been true. But I think the evolution and of like both going what you've gone through both professionally and personally, and then also being, the journey to distill that into something useful for us, I think is awesome and
Yeah.
something we all benefit
No,
from.
thank you, man. And I'm really excited to do this with you. And I'm really thankful that you took the time on your birthday to
Listen,
actually listen to my
this
shit
was a real
again.
birthday gift. I
Yeah.
actually really enjoyed it. It was awesome. It was not like we get to hang, and now I'm reminded that I actually like hanging out with you. It's great, you know.
Thank you, buddy. And to all of our listeners, stay tuned and just listen to. We don't know yet what we're gonna do, but next episode that we are, where I'm gonna speak to Mark, and who is the guy who has just interviewed me, and the other guy like us. So stay tuned, and I guess maybe at the end of this we might also do a Terminator, an Idiot of the Week, or not. We will see. Happy birthday, buddy! Again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Talk to you soon. Ciao.
Ciao.
Welcome to Guys Like Us on episode part B of the Let's Interview Each Other episode.
Part
And let's
B.
get to, yeah, exactly. Part M. I don't know. Maybe it's part A. We don't know how we're going to bring
That's
it
true.
into circulation yet. But, there's no priority in A and B. A and B are exactly the same. This is about Mark today. So I have the joy of interviewing Mark and trying to paint a picture maybe together that people get to know you a little bit better. So my first
I'm
question to you,
excited.
Mark, when you're ready, is a very simple one. Just tell me a little bit, and our listeners, about yourself. I mean, who's sitting across from me right now, 6 hours away in New York? Some demographics, age, what do you do? Kids, no kids, married, not married. Just give me a quick, just a quick rap sheet of Mark. Not the history, but just who is there right now.
Okay. Well, right now, I'll lead with this. I'm a father of two, 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. I'm a husband to a lovely wife from Germany. Um,
Two boys you
yeah,
guys have?
two
Just two.
boys. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Very
Um,
lively, very cute.
very
I might add,
lively.
I can say that,
Yeah, they're legit cute. I can add my wife to thank for
They
that.
are.
But,
Yeah, absolutely you do.
and
Like many
and
other things, but that's a different topic. Yeah.
it's a whole other topic. Yeah, and I think I am a 40. I'm going to be 45 in a week and a half's time.
Jesus.
And
When's your birthday? We don't say this here, but
October.
okay, yeah.
It's
Weekend
okay. It doesn't matter. No, it's October
17th.
17th, next Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you are meeting someone who is, I think, career wise. I'm very bluntly, I'm a venture partner at a little boutique management consultancy called SY Partners as of now, and it's a firm that works with CEOs, their leadership teams, and in times of great change to help them figure out where they are, where they want to go, and how to fill the gaps in between. You've seen some of that work, but what makes it a little bit different, I think, than like boring traditional consulting with respect to that is
Thank you.
yeah, no, it's
As I've done this for a long time. Yeah.
yeah.
But go
Yours
ahead.
is
Go
probably
ahead.
more useful, but mine's certainly
What?
more
Oh,
creative.
no. Yeah, that's true.
At least we could agree on that. Yeah. So, using design, I play a lot in films, and thinking deeply about storytelling. One thing I don't do is touch Excel spreadsheets to make everything clear. So I think really tightly.
For our European listeners, maybe, who are not used to this kind of bullshit bingo, what is
Yeah.
a venture partner actually do? What does that mean? What do you do?
So I'm asking myself that very question on a day-to-day basis.
Okay,
Well,
maybe we'll cut that out. But in case we don't,
no, it's totally fair. No, it's totally fair. No, I think what my responsibilities are to find develop new offerings, new markets. Find signals of like, hey, we should be playing in this space. AI, for examples, would be one of those, just to make it very real for others. Like, how does a firm that traditionally does storytelling make itself relevant, in that kind of space? And so, like who we've worked with for our listeners, it's a little bit of like the Hollywood of American business, like big names, big companies you would know, and the founders even work tightly with Steve Jobs, that kind of thing. but
Starbucks, like a famous
yeah,
one. I
yeah,
remember
yeah,
you telling me, and it's quite publicized. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
so really the big names, and you also find new business and clients for your firm,
Yes.
right? You are
So
the tip of the spear out there to sell the product in a
thank you for
sense.
that. Yes. So the leading piece is, I lead business development, or led that for a while now. I just take those networking skills and now try to find net new. And the nice thing about it is that, I say this humbly, but one of my superpowers would be in relationship making and skills, and I really get a charge out of meeting people, surfacing new ideas, connecting people, and so I feel that it's in a world where so much is being automated, human connection and the skill set on building relationships hopefully won't be replaced, and that's something I happen to major on.
No, I mean, that's amazing. It also, I mean, maybe I can add some color to that because it was difficult, I think, to talk about oneself. But I remember because I was, as a traditional consulting, the stuff you always did and the things you created for your
Mm,
clients looked so beautifully and they were so inspiring. And I always thought that's really cool that you work on solving a business problem with a lot of design and creativity inputs that, as you said, you don't have to, do a touch a spreadsheet to touch minds. Maybe you have to do that for a CFO, but for the rest of the organization, I think it's probably easier without
yeah,
the spreadsheet.
it's probably
In ter-
true. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I think you said a great word, which is beauty, and I think I think that's also I've been at this firm for a long time, and I was always fascinated that it could bring beauty into business really powerfully. The magic of a new idea being shared, but shared not just verbally, but shared with incredible imagery or story.
yeah.
That really brings these things to life. So that's a lot of what I do, and it's I feel like, it's a practice that's much needed in organizations. I wish we all had great designers,
I
working
mean,
alongside with that would be
that's true. No, it is true.
when we get
Absolutely true.
famous, that's my first hire. There'll be an EA and
Yeah,
then a
I kick
designer. Just like,
ass.
can you sketch it? Yeah.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. And I mean, this job also, for completeness sake, brought you a lot to Europe. You also had European clients. This
Yes.
is where we met a lot also in the
Yeah, yeah,
past
yeah.
years,
That's right.
Paris, Germany, and so on. So you've
Portugal,
tried to
yes,
sell
the
that
Netherlands. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, actually.
internationally successfully.
Yeah,
And I guess that was
amazingly
also always a
successfully.
bit, did the business really drive you there, or did you want to go there and sell? I mean, what was first? The
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, and actually it is it's kind of relevant to who I am. So, my parents come from Europe. So, my mother comes from Portugal, my father comes from Germany. And, they came to the States in the mid 20, my dad in his 20s, my mom a little bit earlier, but they met, in university and had me much later. So I kind of grew up in a European culture mindset,
Mm,
as, my parents were struggling or trying to figure out what it means to live and build a life in the
mm,
US, I kind of grew up between both worlds. And my dad, found a kind of sweet spot for himself. He's also quite skilled. Now that I think about it, in relationship making, it's funny. Back to your patterns. How we follow our fathers in more ways, consciously or unconsciously. But he was a long time at Deutsche Bank and down on Wall Street, which meant that he was always going back and forth between Europe and the U.S. and wherever all around the world, and building relationships, connecting people. Similar idea, actually.
mhm.
Um, Less with ideas and more with money and cash, but nonetheless. But
Nonetheless, yeah, but it's a similar
similar pattern.
expression of a talent,
Yeah,
actually. Yeah.
yeah. And so it always felt natural for me to bring ideas or connect with others and abroad. And obviously, going to business school in Barcelona helps with your own
Yeah,
network.
that was my next question. How
Yeah,
do you become that? That sounds like a pretty awesome job because if I summarize it, it's like you fly around and you tell some great stories to people, you show them beautiful things, and then they buy your services.
yeah.
Correct,
That
right? So that's kind
that's
of, I know this is the Disney
delivered with
world.
the Austrian bluntness of a sledgehammer, but that's one way to talk about it. Yeah,
So,
I
so
mean,
and that's an awesome job. I think it's an. I mean,
no,
you could say from
I
the
I
outside,
have a
many people
very
would be
been
happy.
blessed to have a very, very cool job. Very,
Fair
very
enough. So, but how did you become this professionally? I mean, You said you've done it for a long time, correct?
Yeah,
Since
by accident, and it's just true. And I think
but for
I oh
context, you've done it since the MBA, which has been
yeah,
what? We
15 years,
graduated in
14,
2011, 14 years.
14 years. Yeah, yeah,
Almost
it's like
15. Yeah.
crazy. It's crazy.
That's
Eh,
nuts. Okay.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, in it, you have a lot of careers, right, in one place, but
Fair
this
enough.
version, like first you have to become good at strategy, then you have to, like the actual practice, understand it. But I think, I always had, what do they say in German? The Fingerspitzengefühl. You have this
Mhm.
little lightness of reading a room of, oh, you like that? uh,
I'm
of
impressed. You looked that up before the
No,
interview.
I did not.
Okay.
Definitely not. It's one of my few catchphrases I have on demand. But
Nice.
I think like I always was knew I was good with people, and I always knew I was creative and had good stories and ideas and I could think on the spot. And then the intersection of those two, I didn't know that there'd be a consultancy that did anything like this. I think I found that by luck. An old actually someone who went to our business school had come to Asade offering an internship. I applied thinking was something else than it actually was, and then I got
Did
in
you
and I said,
actually
"Oh,
get the internship?
I did, yeah,
Huh.
yeah." I don't know.
I
I
remember
was
that.
here in New York,
Huh.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated by the intersection of design and business. I know that you could be creative inside of business. I always
Mhm.
thought, and I was always gravitating towards marketing because, or some type of brand work because I liked storytelling in that way. And I was like, wait a second, like that's only one part of the story. Those skills are actually CEO skills. Telling great stories, thinking
Absolutely.
about the
Mm.
future, enrolling others behind something you want to build, and it's actually the ultimate act of design. And so that is what drew me in, and
Yeah, but
that's
and if I may ask, if you think of that those almost 15 years, is there anything you are, particularly proud of that you did, or anything that felt particularly hard to achieve or to overcome in that time? And it's a long period of time, but if I ask you, is there anything that springs to your
I
mind?
yeah. So I think I'll give two moments. The first is an easy one. It's like the moment that people you coach and have been with and mentor get promoted, and that's one of like that's applicable anywhere. Like I think that's
Mhm.
always feels great.
Nice. Very nice.
On a professional front, I think, you were talking your story about pulling all-nighters, et cetera, but there's a moment when you realize, "Wait a second, I'm actually good at this." Like, I did something that was amazing. Like, wow.
Mhm.
And that came for me maybe 6 years into my journey when I was, working loads of nights out in Tokyo and building relationships there for a big IBM project, and I don't know, 8,000 Japanese IBMers were there going through my exercises, my slides, etc., leading with the transformation, and I said, "Wait a second, like, did I just help pull this off? Okay, like I can do some. If I can do this, then I can do something
I
else."
remember that project. I just feel a bit old in how long this has been. It's
It's
crazy. It's like
crazy.
it
Yeah.
was yesterday. But anyways, okay,
Yeah.
let's not get too melancholic here. Or
No,
sentimental. All right.
but I think like the new
Yeah.
ones, I would say, like in business development and stuff, I actually think the biggest charge you get is for me, is when you take a real big leader who is paid to know everything, and you walk into a room and you share something they hadn't thought of, and they're just delighted. And that's an addict. I mean, it's beauty. It doesn't mean that I'm smarter than them, not, but it's just I have a useful
That's the
way of
beauty of
thinking about the
external
world.
perspective, right?
Yeah, but I have a view of looking at the world that is enlightening to them and they want to learn more about.
But you are, however, now um, not telling your full story because I know that as a side gig that might not be paid yet, you also do other things like you
Yes.
write scripts. You
Yes.
wrote a script for a TV series that I actually read
Did you
as one of
really?
the few people. I did at least 2 pages. Yes,
Exactly. Okay.
you.
Yes.
So you
Yes.
write, which is totally fascinating to me, but because as much as I love to write stories, I could never imagine how you would even start. So you wrote. Tell us about this
Yeah.
writing scripts
Um,
thing.
so, and I'm going to tell that story by going back a little bit younger as a kid.
Go ahead.
So I think, I always like, I was a bookworm. I always loved reading books. And I think, I'll give my dad credit. I remember in, 2nd grade, let's call it, you get these writing exercises in school, and they kinda give you a prompt, like the dinosaur, and then they give you a bunch of lines, and you have to, like, write a sentence, and I struggled with this as hell. I was like, "Why tell me what I should write down,"
Hmm.
and then my dad is like, "No, you can say anything." Like, the dinosaur was on the ship, the dinosaur went to the moon, the dinosaur farted, whatever, right? And I started to practice, and it's somehow that unlocked a whole load of imagination, that little exercise of just unlimited possibility. And I was just writing,
Do you remember how old you were?
I think 6, 7, and I was just writing nonstop. Like, funny, the dinosaur blank, and there's some, I was just laughing because I was just visualizing it all. And I just fell in love with that bit of pushing your imagination and putting forward. And,
And did that
I
continue through school and high school
Yeah,
as well?
yeah, I was writing plays in high school. I was an actor in high school. I wrote and produced some plays. I was always in love with films and just art forms and in ways different ways of telling story. I was in love with it. And I was even, God, now I'm really gonna out myself. Like, so when I went to university, I went to um you know, Johns Hopkins, in Baltimore, which is most famous for medical school, and everyone, I guess, knows from COVID.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
they had a random, weirdly, one of the best creative writing programs in the country, and that's why I wanted to go there. And I
Because you
went,
wanted to be like, take us back when you were like 16, 17, you wanted to be a writer, or
just wanted to be a writer. Yeah,
and what
I
did
was
your
like,
parents say? I mean, your dad being
they
a
thought that was a
banker,
terrible fucking idea.
but they also didn't keep you from doing it, and obviously paid
No,
for it, and
I
stuff.
mean, they
And it's
they
not
they
like,
knew that I had a creative streak, but like they felt like, I should go to business, go on Wall Street, like join the
yeah,
Country
like your
Club,
dad
which
did.
is like,
Yeah,
yeah, which is like a
yeah,
normal
yeah. Move
thing,
into the house next door in Morristown,
Yeah, 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 that
make
shit.
babies and shit
Yeah,
like that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
keep you on control. But I mean, so much so that, I applied to NYU film school, Tisch, and I got in, which is like kind of a big deal back then, and they even offered a scholarship. And I was like, you're not going there. Like,
Really?
yeah.
That would have been instead of John Hopkins.
Yeah, yeah, which is the right decision. I mean, I understand her, and I really benefited from education. There's such a premium in talk, and when you're in high school about where you go to university, everyone like thinks it's, yeah, that kind of
Mm.
thing. But it was a decision. But look, I still found a way to be creative because I was a major in it, creative writing, which is hilarious that you can actually do that at Hopkins. But it really forced you to write and put down points of view and create different stories and
Hmm.
narratives and just be generative. And then I was in the storytelling business because my first job, funny enough, was with Bertelsmann, and for Random House, this big publishing company. And the very first book I worked on was The Da Vinci Code, and which is like a big seller. You probably know, you heard of it, right, Paul?
Never heard of it.
Yeah, no one did.
Of course, I
Exactly.
read it. I loved it. I mean,
Everyone's read that
yeah,
thing.
it was, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, like I was always, and then I was also in the film industry. I worked on this film called Moneyball, so I was always liked it. And then life gets in the way. You want to travel, you want to build businesses, you want to go to make money, etc. And then I reset myself during COVID. I said, hey, if you're not gonna, it's now or never to write things. And I had friends in Hollywood and stuff. I said, they can help you. So
What did you write?
my first was a existential comedy, and it was called Heaven Hoppers. And the idea was that, and it it asks the question, what would a world look like is if everyone wins when they die? That is, like, the Christians go to the Christian heaven, the 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 Muslims go to the Muslim heaven, the Jews, and you know, but you go to your own individual version of that. So you actually, you end up where you believe, and the joke is, well, what happens if you believe in nothing? And you are in this world forever doomed or blessed to go travel to everyone else's heavens, but you can never have a heaven of your own. And those are the characters called heaven hoppers. And
All right,
you're
that was
laughing.
one. The other one was about like some Roman soldiers or something. What
No,
was
that
that?
was it. You
That
just
was
read the
that.
first 2 pages, yeah, of that, and then
Exactly.
the
Yeah,
second, now I'm
exactly.
calling you out. He's like, "What the fuck is this?" Well, those were my
The
characters
second
because I
one was
thought. Elysium is the
Exactly.
best heaven. And then the second
Exactly.
one,
Is about this offside, right?
yeah, the second one is actually it's now a movie for this producer, but it's a horror comedy, you know, of an offsite going terribly, terribly wrong. And no doubt I've facilitated and designed many of those. So I'm gonna
And
make it
if
as
someone
relevant.
came now, and I know you've been in discussions about this, but maybe you know someone who listens to this
Oh yeah.
and would come up now to you and say, Mark, this script is fantastic. Let's make this a movie. And by the way, I want you to write the next one. Would you drop everything you are doing right now and go full on into this career?
Um I I mean, I would very much lean into it. Obviously, I've been an idiot because, like, I mean, who doesn't want your art to go into it? But I think of like, I think the future, and maybe because I've been in consulting so long, like, you know, you work on so many different things at once. I actually believe in a portfolio lifestyle. I get a lot of fulfillment from my job. You know,
Mhm.
I don't feel like I'm
You
working a
need to go
job.
leave and
Yeah,
something.
well, I just don't feel like I'm just doing a job for money. Like I find a lot of joy out of it,
So
and it's
just
super
doing
creative.
scripts would also not be enough then
No,
on the other hand,
no, no,
right?
no.
You would miss something.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I have friends who are just pure screenwriters and, you know, and he's probably if
You
he
don't
listens
envy
to this,
them.
he knows. Huh? No.
And you don't envy them. Okay.
No, no, no. I
Mm,
envy that they get their shit made. Totally.
fair
But
enough.
I
Fair
don't
enough.
envy their lifestyle. I think it's a writing is a lonely job. You
Fair.
get
I mean, I wouldn't
you're
know,
by
man. I mean,
yourself. You're
my
thinking about
attention span is enough for a two-liner in an
uh,
email. So
well, it
so
won't
I'm
surprise
at
you.
all. Yeah.
Well, I get a lot of my shit done on planes with glasses of wine or, you
Oh,
know,
fair enough. No,
at
that's a
night.
yeah.
Yeah, you
I
know.
do have the romantic fantasy to sit somewhere, you know, by the sea or a lake and write my memoirs and, you know, be done with it probably also in 2 minutes. I get
But
the no, no,
I
the
promise to
idea
read
of
the
being
first 2
cut off.
pages.
Uh, it's got, you know, fair enough. This is your interview. How much did I mean you as a person, and you said before your parents coming from Europe, and you've been around a lot. You haven't I mean, just lived in the US. We're obviously in Barcelona where we met. Tell us a little bit about your international exposure. That you know, how much enrichment is that to your fantasies? You know, your fantasy when you
Look,
write things, and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
how big of a role does that play for you? And
Massive. I think if I could travel around the world 6 months out of the year, I would be so happy. Like, I'm
yeah,
so
that's kind of what
curious.
I thought. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I get a charge out of different cultures, seeing different things, understanding different ways of thinking about the world, etcetera. But and I've also lived it. You know, I think, okay, your parents come from Europe, so obviously you spend a lot of time, and you know, your holidays abroad and vacations and that kind of thing. And I
also
probably have
Portugal.
more.
Actually, only
Yeah,
knew Germany about. Yeah, okay.
yeah, 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 yeah. In the northern part of
Mm,
Portugal, where my mom's from, close to the Spanish border, in Pleasmont, really beautiful there. Much more sophisticated now than when I was a kid. When I was there, it
mm.
smelled like manure and, like, you know, from the animals and
Yeah, man, I bet that
yeah,
must have
yeah,
been.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
it was like
it's
free
really
EU
it was
everything. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was really, you know, third world in a
basic.
way. Yeah. But you know, I think I've moved from, you know, obviously studied also in university abroad in Germany, and then I lived in Shanghai for 2 years as well. I always wanted to live in Asia, so that was really important for me to get that kind of exposure.
That was also
Barcelona,
kind of in the roaring 2000s, no?
fucking awesome. If
Yeah.
I could do a whole podcast on that. I tried to write a story about my life in Shanghai, and then I
And you
was
couldn't
worried that
remember.
yeah, first of all, there's a little bit of that, and then I realized if this thing got published, yo, I don't think they'd let me back in the country. Like, you know, like, it was there were a bunch of characters there. Um, but I you know, I feel like I've cultivated a lot of great friends all over the world, and nothing gives me more pleasure than to visit them and spend time with them and see how they live, and it's a beautiful thing.
So that's you lived in, obviously, you grew up in New Jersey, right?
Morristown, yeah, New Jersey, as you love to
Then
remind
you
me.
moved
Yeah,
to Washington, DC,
Baltimore.
basically, or Baltimore.
Studied a
Then
year in Freiburg in Germany.
here in Freiburg. Then you basically went to China.
Went to China, yeah,
You came
after a
back,
few years in New
did a little
York.
bit of the US, New York, and then Barcelona.
Yeah,
And from there, and then you moved back to New York, and from there you traveled. So that's quite
yeah.
a What's your, I mean, any favorite times there? Any, very jolly memories where like this was kind of,
In
my
life?
the perfect time? Yeah, no, in those years of traveling, or any did you end up in the place you always wanted to end up in, or had you ever thought about staying in Europe,
Yeah, I
with your
mean,
background?
sure, it's a great question. So I think, everyone's got great memories. I think, but my most formative years, I would say, outs non-professionally, just as a human, definitely living in Shanghai was a big part of that. Like,
Yeah.
different, radically different culture, something I had kind of admired, but had to get understand. And, I think you have to call out, like, it was the boom years of Shanghai. And also as a Westerner, you could do whatever the fuck you wanted. And that was insane to me. So like
I'm
no
not gonna
rules.
get into this because
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't have to be
the
about like,
PG rating of this podcast, but no,
yeah.
no, I
Well,
get you. No, I'm not.
yeah, yeah, but I think it's worth calling out. I mean, there was a lot of privilege, and the funny thing is that I always like to share this. I remember I was like, meeting a bunch of copywriters for this advertising company. I told myself I can stay in Asia as long as I'm not teaching English. I need to
Yeah,
like put
fair enough.
something, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
because like yeah, and I found that job, and then the funny thing is, I'd always Chinese teaching actually Chinese people how to be creative in advertising was kind of part of it. But, I was paid $35,000 a year in Chinese, which is nothing, but you could have added zero of what that went, for that city at that point in time, just in terms of,
amazing.
uh, like, yeah,
What you
that
could
was,
afford and do, and
yeah, what you could afford and do and build. And if I'd stayed there, I probably would have had a different life. But those were really formative. Obviously, our time in Barcelona was amazing. And I think, New York, in your 30s, when you make some money, and it matters less,
it
is
was
quite
fun.
a special fucking place. And
I agree.
it's the magnet that keeps bringing me back. As much as I love moving everywhere, I still find it, my heart and soul is kind of the city now.
Nice. That's, you spoke about your formative years, and also what formed you as a person. And one of the things, the many things, but one of the main things I really admire about you is, I think, in my opinion, and from the people I know, you are one of the most balanced and connected people I know. And I experienced it firsthand in when I went through difficult times. Also, you were one of the ones that never judged and always asked what was happening. And you have that, yeah, you have that about you. And I was always wondering, how were you always like that? Did you become that? Was there an aha moment? Did something change? Or was that never a question? How, or did you, I don't know, get everything out of your system when you were in Shanghai? I don't know, but
As a,
but no,
uh,
I don't want to insinuate, but or put
no,
any
no, it's
words into
fine.
your mouth.
It's fine. First of all, thank you for that compliment. That's sweet. I think I know what you mean by balance, maybe, but
Well, just say whatever comes to your mind, and then we'll see if we are talking
no,
about the same thing.
I think like I wanted to back up. I think the other formative years is I think also in high school. I always in high school I feel like I made a lot of good friends, and I found the value in deep value of friendship. I realized like what the power is to have people who you can share ideas with, make you stronger, better, etc. And also just the beauty of that is a great thing. And I've always, if you take that belief and you map that with my own love of people and being helpful, I think just comes really natural. But I would also say my mom is a very generous person,
Hmm.
and a generous spirit. And maybe I
Tell me
didn't
about your mom.
get some of the. She's very Portuguese, very open. By Portuguese, I mean, Mediterranean, very hot headed, but also deeply soulful, like this kind of classic stereotype, but extremely warm hearted and generous. And she has a lot of love to give. And I took, there's some beautiful sides of that, and there's some shadow sides of that, of course.
As for everything in
As for
life.
everything, But, I think anyone who's met her like knows you just say the name Maria and everyone just gets what you mean, from, cooking a meal for 50 people for when 4 people are at
And
the
that
table. Right.
inspired you, or you think you modeled after that, or what did
I
that
think you
do
just
to you?
I think it showed me a way of being with people and trusting them. My mom, for example, you know, if you're we live on a I grew up on a house with a lot of property. My mom brought in a lot of workers, and a lot of workers were mostly Brazilians or
Mm,
Americans. She treated them so well. She always brought them, made sure they were fed, got them drinks. If they did worked extra hard, there were a few extra beers on the table, and I said, wow, mom. And my dad would be like, they're not your family. What's going on?
okay.
And she said, no, she's like, look, you want people to feel loved and cared for, right? And then they'll come back and return some of that for you. It's being good at putting good out into the universe. And it was a nice philosophy. And I think I've taken some of that.
Beautiful. And how did you experience love? Parently love. In a sense. I mean, it was that.
Yeah, it's a
It
great
must have
one.
been something that why am I going with this? Is like because I have this feeling that you have this very strong core belief in yourself, and that usually comes from somewhere because that means someone believed in you no matter what you did.
Mm.
Very often. So I'm asking myself, was that something that you experienced, or was that something that you learned?
Yeah. No, I think that's the darker side, I guess. So it's something I experienced. My mother was convinced that um she had a very smart and special son, and that smart and special son should really do big and great things. And she told me that since I was the age of 4. So the pressure was on, and I think she's happy that I found my own way. But like, if there were bad grades, as we were going back to your thing, if I fell short, my God, I mean, she would whip out the spanking. She would lock me in the room. She'd be like, real discipline. Like, oh, this was like a next level kind of thing. A lot of it is coming from love. A lot of it is like also, both my parents didn't come from wealthy backgrounds, and they made
Mm.
their own way, and they saw what it
They if I
takes.
remember correctly, they also left their respective home countries
Yes.
because they really wanted a better future for themselves
Well,
because they
yeah.
were
Well, my mom
because it was
didn't have a
that's where they were.
choice. Right.
Yeah.
So my mom didn't really have much of a choice. I mean, she lost her father at a young age, at 8,
Okay.
which forced her to move back, which moved from Portugal to the States, where there seemed to be more opportunity.
Mm.
And she actually, I think her story is, grew up, I'm putting in quotations, well, privileged, or had a family of some wealth, and lost it when my grandfather died, and had to go through that and
Mm.
rebuilding herself, and et cetera. And my dad was, post World War II Germany, middle class, if
Fucked up
not
place.
last,
Yeah.
yeah, fucked up place,
Yeah.
Ludwigshafen, horrible, so you can
Oh,
only
wow.
go up.
Yeah.
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 It's
Yeah.
either working at BASF
And
or going
decided
up.
when what how old was he when he left? Okay. So really
Yeah.
as a young man
As a man.
decided, I'm going to look for my fortune somewhere else. Fuck this
Yeah,
place.
and we had relatives here. He had an aunt here, back in the day, and I guess in Germany, I guess, post World War One, when you couldn't afford to
Yeah.
have 5 kids,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
maybe some distant relatives might adopt them. So that's how,
And how do you think that story or their story has impacted you or had an influence on you, if
yeah,
any? I mean,
no, I mean, significantly. I think, look, their story is the American dream, I guess, in a way, I mean, or what it's supposed to be. You came, you worked hard, you found a great job, you got a house, you got a cool car. But they worked really hard, and they let me know that they did. And their dedication, their drive to, build something. And my dad, he also loves to build with his hands. So he built a deck, outside the house, with his hands. He looked up the map, and he's like, "This is how you fucking do it." He's like, "I could pay someone $20,000. I can do it with, $1,000 of supplies." And like, I'm making it
but
up,
did
but
you
that's
ever felt pressured
less.
by that? We've been working so hard to give you a future and to give you da da da
Totally.
and
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
totally. But it wasn't like the full immigrant story of, like, I wasn't they didn't put all their life savings into me. What they did was that they put their expectations onto me, and I think there's a difference.
yeah.
And the expectations were high,
And do
you know?
you feel that you have fulfilled them, or who cares, or what's the? status.
Yeah, I think I'm glad their expectations shifted because I think no,
So
I
you mean
mean,
they gladly the goalpost was adjusted and I just jumped high enough.
yeah, I
It
mean,
was adjusted
exactly.
to exactly how high you could jump.
Exactly. Well, you could put it this way. Like there was a I don't have a mansion in the Hamptons like my mom maybe envisioned, back in the day, or was CEO of some big corporate, back to our conversations
Terrible.
around success. But I think what she is I think she doesn't fully understand what I do, but understands that it's pretty cool and it's interesting
And
and
meaningful.
I've and meaningful,
Mm.
and that I'm happy, I'm not poor, and uh like I've back to your point about balance, maybe I figured something out. And she acknowledges that, and I think they do. And so I think they'd be proud. But I also gave them two grandchildren to distract them, and so
Exactly. Here you go.
which
I
is
think that's
a
kind of
perfect
that
methodology to lower
what's
expectations.
exactly what works the best. Because you asked me, we've talked about this, and you asked me this, what's different between the Mark I met on that first night on Plaza del Sol, where you talked an immense amount of bullshit, in my opinion,
Mm,
and the Mike that is
still
sitting
do.
in front of me,
Yeah.
apart from obviously the great influence I had on you. But other than that, what's different? And what happened in those 15 years? Is there things in life that you look differently at? Are you still the same?
Yeah, I feel 80% the same and 20% different. That's a great question,
And
actually.
and can I just thank you for that? That's exactly where my balanced and kind of, I kind of felt you were always kind of you and in place. And
Mm.
you kind of adjusted with gravity and the movements of things, but the principles, the foundations were very, there to a very large extent, which just confirmed.
No, it's thanks. Yeah.
What's the 20% though that changed?
I feel like this will shock you. Um, less less talking and more doing. And I
Ah,
think
it's not
like
shocking.
no, I figured actually time is limited. Let's put some great things out in the world. And I think my ambition is weirdly bigger. Less than like role or money, just more like, hey, like it's a little bit like this podcast. Like, let's put something out in the world, and see where it
I mean,
goes.
what an amazing segue to my next question. When you think about this podcast, why are you doing this? What is your goal with it? Why are we still at it? And we are recording our, I think, 13th, 14th, 15th episode, not counting the ones we threw away. So we are, I think, close to 20. So it's a significant investment of time
It
already.
is.
And that
It
with
is.
me, I mean, that's a pain. So
That's a great thing. Well,
what
look,
drives you?
I think the root of this podcast to me is friendship. I think it's our friendship, and I think it's a good model. I think for especially a lot of us have friends all over the world, and it's just an amazing forcing function for two great friends to figure out how to spend an hour together, and talk about things that feel meaningful and important to us. Um, that's one of the main reasons. I think the second is like I think there is a gap, I'll call it, as a friend once said, like of non-toxic and actually really kind of great conversations, between for guys like us who are have some wisdoms and are also trying to figure stuff out. And I think this is a great platform for us to noodle on that together. I think we have a lot of shared perspective and some different ones, and how we kind of hone in and land on a thing is really beautiful for me. And I hope a lot of our listeners love the content. They love the topics, and they take away something from it.
Nice. And so that's always kind of my next question. So who do you think should listen to us or to, the things that we have to say?
Oh God, are you doing like an audience segmentation strategy here on this?
No, 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 not at all. But I'm
you
just,
know,
just a little bit of a pitch
suffering
since you,
dads.
yeah.
Yeah. No, look, I think those who are also reflecting on some of the most, critical topics that make up our lives, and either how to best do it, or do you also feel the same way? Like, I think
Hmm?
people who want to be part of the company would feel easily comfortable with us sharing a bottle of wine in a cafe or in a bistro would be the right kind of people to listen to us. If
How
I
did
think you
you? I
kind of
wonder.
know, you know.
Yeah, I no, I agree with you. But how did you, kind of putting something like this out there, and that everyone can listen to at any time. And by the way, the other day I sat together with friends and I said, you know what you said this other day, and I was like, I don't remember. It's like we just have no clue. It is also, I mean, you put yourself out there, right? So people can like it or not like it and find it embarrassing, whatnot. How do you deal with that? How is that for you?
I think it's maybe actually part of the 20% shift. I think, look, it is what it is. I think I feel confident in what we have to say. I mean, as we're being authentic, we're being ourselves. We're absolutely not performative.
No, we actually
As
suck at
anyone
this.
listening to us would say,
We actually
exactly.
suck at this.
But uh, look, we're also living kind of in the era of content creators, and there's so much crap out there, and so
Well, I think,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Look, you
in the
know,
top
it's
10%,
it's better
for
it's
sure.
better it's better than starting
Yeah,
an OnlyFans account.
depends on who you are, but for us, for sure.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so is there anything I didn't ask, which would have been a relevant question, or anything you didn't talk about?
I I think you did a really good job of interviewing me, and I hope that people feel like they got a good sense of who I am and what I love. I wish you asked me um, some of my very first loves, but I'm not going to answer that for you.
Um,
I'll save for the next time,
it's true. We didn't. I know. I mean,
but I'll answer that question.
go
I
ahead,
think
please.
I like to define people by some of the movies that they love, and or the ones that really stuck with them. And I had three that worked really well. So the first being Star Wars. Every kid loves Star Wars. That was always kind of great, etc. The
I never
second was
loved Star Wars, by the way. Just
uh,
saying.
well,
I
yeah,
was more
okay.
of a Trekkie. Yeah, but here you go.
All right. Look, well, there's some element of science fiction, right?
Yeah.
The second was Back to the Future. I just loved the idea of time and going back in a time machine. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. But the reason why I loved it so much also is that moment when Marty McFly or Michael J. Fox plays Johnny Be Good for the first time,
Oh,
and then
amazing.
everyone just it's the first time they
Yes.
hear rock and roll, and you realize
Yes.
like I was like, I want to be that. Like, there's something about that was just the coolest. Like I thought that was just the greatest thing ever. And then the third was Indiana Jones traveling around the world and going to architectural things. These are like the building blocks I think of that formed a lot of my imagination. And uh the kind of characters I wanted to be, a little bit of Luke Skywalker. Actually, I always wanted to be Han Solo, a little bit of Marty McFly, and of course Indy. Those are my heroes.
And I think, because we asked so many great questions, people would exactly have expected this, from everything
Yeah.
you said.
Yeah.
I agree. And but I think it's a great, I like this segment because it reminds me now also of one thing is that we completely left out, and we mentioned in the very beginning. You've been married for, I don't know how many years now, 10? No, 8? I don't remember. Quite
Nine,
some
nine.
time, to your beautiful wife Vera, which, by the way, Vera, I still don't get why. I mean, really, in case you're listening, but I've told you this many times. No, but in all honesty, it's such an positively, I wouldn't say uneventful, but and not boring, but something where at least in our friendship, this has always been a constant for you, and ever since I've known you, because I think you guys have known each other for 15 years more or less,
Yeah.
and she's been part of your life and you've been part of hers, um and and it's a beautiful thing, and really a relationship that I look up to a lot. And I would,
Well,
you
thank
know
you.
be curious to hear what it has done for you, and the importance that relationship had in your life, and also in how you've lived your life in the past 15 years.
Yeah. Wow. Gosh. And ending with
Just
a
when you thought you
big
were
one.
done,
Just God, I was thought I was
and
off the hook. Vera, I love you. Hey, I think um if I'm balanced, Vera's probably even more balanced than I am. I think there's
Mhm.
some practical equally practical and equally wild in a way, kind of
Well,
way.
she
Being
actually has her shit together. I mean, I know because I
yeah,
lived with you for a week last, a
yeah.
month ago. Without her, you would be
Oh,
fucking lost.
with
Yeah,
kids? Oh, the worst.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So like,
yeah.
no,
Okay.
but I mean, a strong partner. I think a believer in me, and as much as I'm a believer in her, and I think that really helped. And I think also, great relationships, and we should talk about this another time. I feel like it's 70% attraction, 30% is just like working together as partners. It's just something my friend Paris used to say that. It's in my head, and I agree with it in a way. And she's been uh, equal parts friend, lover, and mom in amazing ways. And I think like just lucky. Like you're I'm at a loss for words because you're putting me on the spot, but I think that's really
I
how I
think there
feel.
is no
Maybe that's
better
the luck.
way to end this interview than Mark saying, "I'm at a loss for words. I've done my job."
Thank you.
And with this, friends and guys like us, we talk to you soon.